watching The Craig Carton Show with Tyrone Johnson. More coming up tomorrow.
Ashton Genty, between yards and yards before contact and yards after contact, all these sorts of, they're giving him nothing. He is getting hit constantly behind the line of scrimmage, multiple yards behind the line of scrimmage, and frankly, at this point, I think he's essentially out of the race, and this is partly due to Emeka Egbuka having a great year, Tyler Warren putting up big numbers, Ted McMillan, I think, is maybe the most talented player overall in the rookie class.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The leader right now in the clubhouse in the odds market is Fernando Mendoza. College football purists, yep, absolutely know that guy. Fantastic. He's a great quarterback. Non-purists who are tuning in just for the biggest games, who is this guy, Joe, and how did he get here?
Well, he came from Cal. He's a mobile kid. He's big. He's about 6'3", about 220. He's a gutty kid and had a great performance for Kirk Cignetti.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
We're in a weird place with Trevor Lawrence. This was another one of these quote-unquote can't-miss generational quarterback prospects, right? Everybody was salivating over when he was a freshman winning national championships. And here we are, about 5 years later, looking at ourselves going, is it just time for Trevor Lawrence to get a change of venue or something? Like, what's got to give here? Hopefully this Liam Cohen offense starts to come together.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Americans got to find answers in these partnerships, and I think they need to look at their who's making these decisions from a stat standpoint.
Well, it's so funny to me, especially coming off of the Walker Cup just a few weeks before, how it just seems like there's this glaring chasm between American partnered match play and American individual, singles match play.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
New felony charges against Mark Sanchez, plus is the WNBA relationship with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert beyond repair. Welcome, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today from FOS Studios in New York City. I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thanks so much for joining us to start off the week as we're bringing you the biggest stories happening in the business and culture of sports. We also have former two-time Stanley Cup champion Daniel Carcillo on to talk if the NHL is taking player concussion seriously. But first, let's dive into the shoot-around.
Yeah, and let's start with that serious story and updates that happened over the weekend as Fox Sports and former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez is now facing a new felony battery charge. This carries up to a penalty of 6 years behind bars. This all according to Marion County, Indiana prosecutors. Now, Sanchez was also hit with 3 misdemeanor charges, including battery and public intoxication. Sanchez and a 69-year-old delivery driver were both hospitalized. This after a late-night altercation on Saturday. Fox Sports briefly addressed the situation in their pregame show on Sunday, with college football analyst Brady Quinn filling in for Sanchez during that Colts-Raiders broadcast on Sunday, Renee.
Yeah, Baker, when this story first broke, I thought Mark Sanchez was the victim in this. Yeah. But now, after I've heard more and seen especially the pictures of the 69-year-old known as PT, as they're referring to him, it's a really, really crazy, sad story. And he was in the truck, could not hear Sanchez. He didn't have his hearing aids in, actually, when he was confronted by Sanchez. A lot here. It has, as you mentioned, escalated to that level 5 felony, which does range from 1 to 6 years of sentencing. But they're still investigating. There's still potential charges that Mark Sanchez could face.
And questions for Fox: does Brady Quinn fill in for and replace Mark Sanchez for the rest of the year for the NFL coverage? Meanwhile, in the NHL, the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid have reached a new 2-year deal. This will keep the 3-time MVP in Edmonton and will pay him an average of $12.5 million a year. And McDavid confirmed the news on social media with the caption, "Our journey continues here." McDavid was set to become an unrestricted free agent after this season, so great news for Edmonton here.
And this deal is significantly lower than the record-setting numbers we saw for Kirill Kaprizov, which was a $17 million AAV when he inked that contract with the Minnesota Wild. For the Oilers, they had to get these deals done because we saw them last September lock in Leon Draisaitl to an 8-year extension for $14 million AAV. They just recently signed a 3-year extension with coach Chris Nullblock, and the coach himself said, listen, this is exciting, but the more exciting thing with the season coming up is to get some more player contracts done. One of those players he's referring to of course, was his captain, Connor McDavid. So with this deal, does keep him there, does take a pay cut, but he wanted to stay in Edmonton for the team, by no surprise, that's been in the Stanley Cup the last 2 seasons. I think I'd want to stay there too.
True. Well, ESPN is denying a report that they canceled longtime college football host Paul Feinbaum from appearing on its other network shows. This after Feinbaum said he was interested in running for the U.S. Senate seat in Alabama. Outkick's Clay Travis says Feinbaum did not appear on his regularly scheduled SportsCenter and ESPN appearances. This after he also declared his support for President Trump. Now, Feinbaum would have to make a decision to run by January 26th of 2026. That's the qualifying deadline for the Alabama Senate race, Renee.
Yes, and we did see, as Clay Travis mentioned, we have not seen Paul Feinbaum. He's on the 4-hour SEC network show. He's on the pregame show. He's on SportsCenter. He wasn't in his usual shows that you expect, but he was on the YouTube show for ESPN's Matt Berry. And so for SportsCenter, that's the biggest surprise, I think, that had people the most shocked, myself included. But I know ESPN quickly came out, negated all the claims, and said this is not true. It's completely false. Totally false was the terms that they used, that Outkick had claimed that Feinbaum was not going to be with them. But if he does run for Senate, it does make you wonder how much longer he'll be with ESPN.
Very good point. Well, it was not the best of weekends for former preseason number 1 Texas and number 2 Penn State, as both those teams fell out of the top 25, making their paths to the football playoff much more precarious. Also for James Franklin specifically, talk now centers on if he even stays with the Nittany Lions and what they do with his $50 million buyout. So let's get to that and more in today's main event. All right, let's bring in FOS reporter David Rumsey. So, David, let's start with Penn State. Not a lot of people expected things to go this bad for the Nittany Lions. So what happens here with Coach James Franklin, and what's the latest on his buyout here?
Yeah, absolutely, Baker. Renee, great to be back with you as always. And yeah, if Penn State wanted to move on from James Franklin right now this season, it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million to buy him out. Now, obviously, he's struggling to win those big games, and then this weekend, even bigger disappointment than that loss to a top-ranked Oregon last week, right? So I think the problem for Penn State, though, is what do you do if you buy him out? Not just getting the cash and paying him. They can round that up with their donors, but is there really a better option out there this offseason or even in the future years? And I think that's why he's been able to retain his job, because he is such a good coach, and it's hard to get to that very, very next level.
All right, so we're talking Penn State, but also some other teams that were ranked in the preseason and top 5 across college football in Clemson, as well as Texas, who has the preseason Heisman favorite in Archie Manning. Those 3 teams struggling right now out of the top 25 rankings as of today. Is this more of a case of upsets, or is this more saying that college football is in a space where the middle of the of talent has caught up to the top of the level?
That's a great point, Renee, and kind of something that all of us have been covering and following closely here at Front Office Sports this season. Just the parity that college football seems to have now, with teams being able to get players out of the transfer portal, with expansion of these conferences, making them bigger and bringing more teams in. It's harder to compete, and it's giving some teams a chance to compete like they wouldn't have before, whether it's NIL money or revenue sharing money now this time for the first time this season. So yeah, I think parity is really the example here.
Let's move to Boulder. In my school, University of Colorado, obviously the Buffs lost to TCU over the weekend. But the bigger news, obviously, is Deion Sanders saying that his health issues, especially his blood clots, have returned. And if anything, they're getting worse. So the big question here is, how much longer does Coach Prime stay in Boulder? And does he even finish out the season, given that this health scare is back here?
Yeah, Baker, I mean, no question. We all know what Coach Prime has been able to do for that program and really elevate them, not just off the field with the spotlight, but on the field last season. And then now without Shedeur Sanders there this year and Travis Hunter, they're still searching for that first Big 12 win. So yeah, obviously we had his cancer scare this offseason, and now the return of his blood clots, which he mentioned on Saturday night. So we'll see. I think he'll give an update on that either today or on Tuesday when he meets with reporters. But keep in mind, he did sign a 5-year, $54 million extension back in March, which makes him one of the highest paid coaches in college football. So I don't think Colorado would want to move on from him necessarily if he's willing and able to coach, even though he is an expensive option.
Well, we can't talk coaching chaos without going down in Chapel Hill, because one of the highest paid coaches in the ACC and one of the top coaches across college football, Bill Belichick, his tenure has not been good. Now, although he does have about 70 new players and there's a lot of new there, They've been outscored 120-33 across their losses. And not only are they losing on the field, but off the field, Bill Belichick is still going at it with the Patriots with some weird back and forth. The latest is that they can't even tweet or retweet anything from the UNC football account about the Patriots, including Drake May. What is happening here with Bill Belichick? Do you think that realistically his tenure is going to even last past this season, let alone the extent of his full contract?
Man, overreaction Monday, right? Listen, would it surprise anybody if he left after the season, whether he walked away or got fired? At this point, probably not. But if I were a betting man, I would say he does get another crack at it next year. You know, he's trying to preach patience, saying that, hey, we're going to target a lot of freshmen in this upcoming class. It's going to take some time. Now, obviously, he's up there in age, so maybe we're thinking he doesn't have a lot of time, right? But yeah, just that game against Clemson, I think when, we wrote preseason kind of forecasting from a media perspective, hey, that could be a huge game, ABC game of the week, maybe College game day would visit Chapel Hill. Instead, also Clemson wasn't too hot coming into the game either. It's 12 o'clock on ESPN. Clemson comes in, blows them out of the water. So yeah, just like Colorado searching for their first conference win, it might be a while before UNC gets their first conference win as well.
Not to be apoplectic here, but which of all of these teams that we discussed basically is in the worst position out of all of them right now?
A lot on the struggle bus right now in college football.
Well, I mean, as far as competing, you have to say it would be UNC, right? Because they just don't have the standard, typical, traditional resources that a football powerhouse would, right? And maybe you could argue Colorado as well, really, because those two teams are probably struggling to gain the most amount of talent, right? I know it looks bad for Penn State because they want to win a national championship, but they're still going to be right up there. I know with Texas, Arch Manning isn't living up to the hype, but they're still Texas. They're going to be there. We'll see how the season plays out, right? But yeah, for these teams that maybe got an initial spark with a celebrity coach, it's kind of showing, hey, you need the players, you need the talent to keep up.
The amount of empty seats in the stands at Chapel Hill last weekend.
Fans leaving left and right.
Absolutely. David Rumsey, good stuff as always. Thank you. And coming up next, everyone, on Front Office Sports Today, is the WNBA relationship between the commissioner and the players beyond repair? We're getting into that next.
Now let's get to a player who was taken in the first round of every fantasy football draft, and thus far has produced the least points, George. I mean, I thought you'd just take a rookie running back in the first round and you get yourself 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. But Boise State's Ashton Jeanty for the Las Vegas Raiders, we got out of excuses, right? Like at this point, it's, they got to give him the ball more. They got to do this. They got to do that. I mean, George, does this guy look like Barry Sanders? Like, that was the comparisons? Like, I haven't seen any of that yet.
Our panicometer, it doesn't go high enough here. All right, because this is, I mean, come on, we're freaking out here. I don't think it's all Jeanty, by the way. He has more yards after contact than before contact. That pretty much lets you know what the problem is there. All right, the Raiders needed a running back, sure, but they need an offensive line. All right, they need a couple of offensive linemen. It's not something you can fix in one off season here. So yeah, we're gonna eat it with Jeanty. He's not gonna be worth the first round pick in fantasy. It's just not this year. In future years we'll see here, but not this year. The offensive line is not very good. The defense is not very good, so they have to throw the ball more in the second mix. They're trailing every game, so that's hurting us as well here. So yeah, like I said, the panicometer, it doesn't go high enough for this. Okay, I am more than concerned. I am not calm. I am critical. I am flipping out.
Isn't there going to be a time where he just breaks it free? George, like, what you said is not false, but I think there's a point being missed here. Why has he not broken free one time the whole season? Not once, to just run away. Like, he's Devin Singletary right now. No offense to Devin Singletary, but that's who he is.
Fantasy Sports Today, Fridays starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, only on SportsGrid.
Hey, welcome back, friends. Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington. I'm Baker Machado. Well, the tension between WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and players like Napheesa Collier have reached a new level. This after ESPN reported that a planned meeting this week between the two is now officially canceled. This is the current collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of the month. So let's bring in WNBA insider Christina Williams. She also hosts the podcast In Case You Missed It with Christina Williams. Christina, good to have you here. So I guess let's get to the big question. Is this relationship between the commissioner and players like Napheesa Collier beyond repair?
Well, it certainly seems like it, especially after the news broke earlier this week that the meeting between Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and Napheesa Collier had been canceled. And it all stems from Napheesa Collier's exit interview that happened earlier in the week as well. And it seems like the players are really unhappy with Kathy Engelbert's relationships with them personally. And in her address to the media ahead of the WNBA playoffs, she talked about how she wanted to be better and how she wanted to work as a commissioner to repair some of those relationships. But it certainly seems like the players have the upper hand when we talk about CBA negotiations coming into this and the commissioner and this relationship being overshadowed.
Yeah, and I'm curious your thoughts because as Kathy Engelbert came out and denied the claims that Napheesa Collier made regarding their conversation that happened around Unrivaled, do you think that she's telling the truth? Do you believe Kathy Engelbert when she's saying that she did not make those comments or they were taken out of context with her conversation with Collier?
Well, whether I believe he told the truth or not, I don't think that's important. But certainly when you talk about credibility, determination, there have been other stories leading up to the exit interview that have come out about Kathy Engelbert making comments. When we talk about the CBA negotiations, Nneka Ogwumike had reportedly made a comment saying that the commissioner said that she didn't know business, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so if we look at who has the public's opinion right now and who they're leading towards, it's definitely the players. They feel more sympathetic towards the players. And in her address to the media, Kathy Engelbert said that, I'm human too. And she tried to win the public's opinion and getting their empathy for her as a commissioner and saying that she will do better as a leader. She didn't deny that the conversations happened. And I think that is something that struck me as someone who was in that room. She didn't deny that the conversation didn't happen. She said she was disheartened by how it was characterized. And so I think that opens up a lot when you talk about whether or not she was telling the truth or not. She didn't say she didn't have those conversations. She just said she was disheartened by how the conversation was characterized.
Well, given all of that, does Engelbert even stay on through the negotiations, or does she either resign or is she forced out by the person she reports to? Mind you, that's NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. I mean, I guess does Kathy Engelbert even see the end of these negotiations?
In her address to the media, she said that the reports that she would resign after the CBA was done was inaccurate. She said that she is not a quitter. She doesn't shy away from big moments and that she would do everything that she can to make sure that her relationships with the players is better. She also mentioned and referenced her 40 years of business experience. And so it certainly seems that Kathy doesn't look to step down, according to her own words. And she also mentioned that Commissioner Adam Silver is very supportive of her. When we look at the structure of the WNBA in terms of the ownership stakes, you have to go back to 2021, right? And look at the $75 million capital raise in which the WNBA split up the 50-50 ownership lead between the WNBA and the NBA as well. They gave 16% equity to new stakeholders. And so I think when you think about Kathy Engelbert and whether or not she will resign, she answers to a lot of people. And her job as the commissioner is to be that bridge between the players and the owners. So Kathy says she's not stepping down. I certainly don't think that getting rid of Kathy will solve the problems that the players are looking to solve in these CBA negotiations. We talk about wanting more money, getting their fair share of the pie, because the NBA controls who will be the next commissioner. And certainly they will want to hire someone who will be in their favor. And so while I think that there is fair criticism of Kathy and her leadership in terms of her personal relationships with the players, you have to look at her entire body of work and her tenure as commissioner for the WNBA in the last 5 or 6 years. She certainly has been able to turn the league around. And so I don't think it would be in the players' best interest to necessarily get rid of her while they're in the middle of negotiating this current CBA.
I'm glad you brought up 2021, Christina, because what a lot of people don't realize is the WNBA the last few years has been working to truly establish full-time staff. I mean, we're seeing it from the officiating to the commissioner to the, just staff in general. Realistically, it doesn't feel like they have steps in place to prepare if they do have to part ways with a commissioner or have their leadership questioned. When you look at this process and where we are now, where things stand, can the WNBA truly even survive something like this if they don't have the true process in place that maybe other leagues might have built in?
Yeah, Renee, you certainly did bring up a great point. The WNBA doesn't have the same structure as the NBA and not even the same resources as well. And so I personally don't think that the league could survive should there be a lockout. But the commissioner, again, in her address to the media ahead of the WNBA finals, she certainly mentioned that she feels that the current CBA will get extended. And if we look at 2020 and those CBA negotiations, the deal didn't get done until January. And so the commissioner is optimistic that the players and the players union will be able to extend the current CBA. But on the other end, Sophie Cunningham came out this week and said the players will prepare for a lockout if necessary. And so it certainly seems like there are two different stories happening with the two sides. But the commissioner, again, is optimistic that they will be able to extend the current CBA and get a deal done by January or February of 2026.
Christina, with the last little bit of time we have with you, you're in Vegas covering the WNBA Finals. The Aces are up 2-0 as we now head to Phoenix for Game 3. Where do you sort of see this series ending up, and do we think this potentially could be a sweep and putting Las Vegas in a very prestigious category of one of the greatest dynasties in WNBA history?
Yeah, the Las Vegas Aces are on the hunt for their third championship in 4 years at the helm of four-time MVP Asia Wilson. And this is the first time that the league has seen a best-of-7 series, and the Aces got off to a great start, 2-0 in their matchup against the Phoenix Mercury, looking to finish it in 4. When you look at the experience of the Aces, they have found every single way to win, whether it was in the regular season, going from the 8th seed to the 2 seed, and having their bench, Jewel Lloyd taking that lesser seed coming off the bench, Dana Evans having a standout game in Game 1. So I think that the Aces, they definitely have the upper hand, and I have the Aces winning in 6.
Christina, good to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. WNBA insider and also host of the podcast In Case You Missed It with Christina Williams. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We got a lot more front office sports today. Headed your way right after this break.
Well, Shadur, which quarterbacks are you talking about? Because there is some bad quarterback play out there, but the dude who can't beat Dylan Gabriel out for a job and can't beat Joe Flacco out for a job certainly can't lay claim to being better than any other quarterback in the league.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
That's a lot for a closer. 10. That's you're not a closer anymore if you blow 10 games. I mean, my goodness. That's
he's mentally broken too. Like, it's to the point where, like, Dodger fans aren't even mad at him; they're more mad at the Dodgers for putting him out there.
Putting him in.
Right? It's more so.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, guys, like, he's done.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Major League Baseball has decided it is time to put balls and strikes not just in the hands of the umpires, but also the robot umpires, as they say. The ABS system is now officially in place starting next season. Now, keep in mind, they're not just throwing this out there. They have used this at the Arizona Fall League, and they've also used it at different levels of the minor leagues as well.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Everything changed at that point. They went and got Jonquel Jones, and they really had that triple threat monster team. That second year they lost in the WNBA Finals 3-1 against the Las Vegas Aces. Year 3, they finally get over the top hump. And you can question whether they should have won the title with that foul call late in Game 5 that sent Breanna Stewart to the foul line.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
And welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington and Baker Machado, and as conversations and research continue around brain health across all major sports leagues. Former two-time Stanley Cup champion Daniel Carcillo has been one of the players really at the forefront of all of this, especially discussing alternative therapies to help navigate concussion symptoms and mental health challenges. And the former Chicago Blackhawk and NHL player Daniel Carcillo joins us now. Daniel, thank you so very much for joining us. Let's start with the NHL specifically when it comes to concussions. Do you feel like the league is taking this seriously?
Well, they're the last league to admit a link between repetitive head trauma and neurodegenerative disease, but they have made some strides in the recent CBA to put monies towards players' health and the NHL Alumni Association. So I think there's some good people trying to push some narratives and agendas when it comes to how when athletes leave the game, they're damaged and they need help. So, and then now luckily there's a medicine that's being legalized, through the states to treat a number of neurological and psychiatric disorders. So, there's definitely tools out there to be used, and I think they're looking at it and trying to avoid maybe any official statement that they can.
Yeah, we looked at a study from Boston University last year that cited that every season a hockey player continues to play ice hockey, it increases their chances of any sort of CTE or chronic traumatic issues by 34%, which is extremely alarming. And when you look across sports at what soccer, football, others are doing, especially the NFL around CTE, do you think that the NFL is really setting the template or kind of the roadmap of what the NHL could be following around protecting players in terms of CTE?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I've always advocated for is just information, and then let the guys make a responsible choice on their own to sign on the dotted line. And I've had this question a lot after my career, would I still sign? And I likely would have. It's a trade-off that a lot of us would make. That being said, I think there has to be some sort of programming or information about, the true risks. And then there has to be some tools for us to be able to use. And luckily, through the FDA and these FDA-approved studies, there's a medicine out there that's natural and that the states are taking initiatives towards really pushing forward for not only the athletic community, but also our veteran community, people that suffer from falls and car accidents. Sport-related concussions are just a few in that bucket.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because a lot of former players like yourself have really attributed these natural and different sort of homeopathic therapies, from psilocybin, cannabis use, to a bunch of different things that, by the way, the leagues don't support. Why do you feel like the leagues don't support a lot of these therapies?
Well, because of their legality. They're federally illegal, right? Cannabis, I think it's in over 34 states, and the way that cannabis was able to weave themselves onto either these ballot measures or being accepted was because of its medical use. Medical always came before recreational. And now you have something similar, although I think better, in psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. It's going through the FDA. It's been deemed FDA breakthrough therapy designation for treating treatment-resistant depression and major depressive disorder, two really big issues in this country. And it's been showing great benefit in reversing the actual signs of these tau proteins that end up leading to this neurodegenerative disease because of repetitive head traumas, not just concussion.
Mm-hmm.
Really going to be fascinating to see where all of this goes. Daniel, it's such a pleasure to have you here joining us today and talking about all this for us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, that is former NHL player Daniel Carcillo. And let's see what's bubbling over at the FOS water cooler. Well, Renee, what a 2025 for 22-year-old Blue Jays starting pitcher Trey Yesavage. After being selected in the 2024 draft, Yesavage pitched in Double-A ball back in April and made his Blue Jays debut back on September the 15th. And in just his fourth Major League start ever, he pitched 5 1/3 hitless innings with a postseason franchise record 11 strikeouts against the Yankees in that Game 2 of the ALDS, with mom and dad in the stands watching. What a moment for him.
Yeah, as you talk about that September debut, that's less than 3 weeks ago that he made his debut. And for him to have 11 strikeouts through 8 splitters, one of the
That
best
split was
offenses in Major League Baseball and the Yankees and silenced them. They had no response. And he set multiple postseason records for the Blue Jays for strikeouts in a postseason game. The second youngest pitcher, because you mentioned he's only 22 years old, the second youngest pitcher with a double-digit strikeout in a postseason game. I mean, to set records, to have hitless performances like this, I understand why they booed when it was time for him to come out, but his job was done.
Ooh,
the
yes.
masterpiece could not be tainted. And now, as he mentioned, he said he was built for this, and he's on cloud 9 after that game, which I would be on cloud 9
I would be too. And having your parents in the stands watching that, amazing. All right, friends, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Renee and I are back for way more fun tomorrow. We'll see you next time.